The bell over the door rang twice in quick succession, then stopped mid-chime like someone had grabbed it. I was bent behind the counter, trying to free a roll of receipt paper that had jammed sideways. The register screen glowed blue against my hands. When I stood up, the door was already closed. No one inside. The bell kept swaying a little, clicking against the metal hook. I waited for the footsteps that usually followed. Boots on tile. A cough. The scrape of someone's jacket zipper. Nothing came. The air conditioner hummed. Outside, a truck engine idled too long and then cut off. I walked to the door and pushed it open. The parking lot was empty except for my car and a pump truck I recognized from earlier in the night. The truck was dark now. No driver. The smell of gasoline hung low, heavier than usual, like it hadn't dispersed. I stood there longer than I should have, holding the door open, letting the warm night air push against my face. The bell tapped once more and went still. I closed the door and locked it, then unlocked it again. I hadn't meant to lock it. My thumb just did it. It was 12:07 a.m., according to the clock above the cigarette case. The minute hand had a crack in it that made it look like it was always bent. I told myself the bell probably caught on the frame. I went back to the register and pulled the jammed receipt free. It tore unevenly, leaving a strip dangling like a loose tooth. I ripped it off and smoothed the roll with my thumb. The night shift always started like this. Little things. The station sat off the highway, not close enough to town to feel watched, not far enough to be truly quiet. A rectangle of light and a field of dark. Trucks came through in clusters, then nothing for long stretches. I liked the empty hours, the way time stretched, the way the radio faded in and out depending on the wind. I poured myself coffee from the pot behind the counter. It had been sitting since 10. Burnt, I drank it anyway. The cup was chipped near the rim, and the heat leaked through the thin cardboard sleeve. My keys sat beside the register, heavy and familiar. I turned them once on the counter without thinking, listening to the clink. The cameras showed 4 angles on the small monitor by the cigarettes. Pump 1, pump 2, the back door, the aisle. All empty. The green time stop in the corner flickered between seconds. At 12:19, a sedan pulled in. Headlights off until the last second. It stopped crooked at pump 3. A man got out. He wore a light jacket even though it wasn't cold. He didn't look at the store when he stepped out. He just stood there with the door open. One foot still inside, like he was listening to something in the car. I watched him on the camera instead of through the glass. I don't know why. The angle made his movements slightly delayed. He shut the door, then opened the trunk. No plates on the back, just a blank bracket. I leaned closer to the monitor, squinting. He didn't take anything out. He closed the trunk and walked to the pump. Inserted his card. Removed it. Inserted it again. His shoulders moved with the effort. The machine beeped faintly through the glass. He turned his head and looked straight at the camera mounted above the door. I looked away first. When he came inside, the bell rang normally. One clean sound. He went to the cooler and stood there with the door open, staring at the drinks. The light inside the cooler buzzed. Condensation dripped down the glass and pooled on the rubber mat. He didn't reach for anything. "You need help?" I asked. He shook his head without turning around. After a moment, he closed the cooler and walked to the counter empty-handed. He placed his card down instead of handing it to me. I slid it back. "Pump 3, he said. His voice was flat, not tired, not angry, just empty. I rang it up. He watched my hands instead of the screen. When the receipt printed, he didn't take it. He left it lying there, the paper curling at the edge. He didn't pump gas. I watched him on the camera again as he walked back to his car. He stood by the driver's side door for a long time. Long enough that I looked down at the register and then back up. He opened the door, leaned inside, then straightened and walked back toward the store. I felt my stomach tighten, slow and deliberate. He stopped at the door, hand hovering near the handle, and looked at the hours sign taped crookedly to the glass. Then he turned and walked away around the side of the building, out of camera range. I waited for him to come back around. He didn't. At 12:41, the pump timed out. The screen flashed and reset. No gas dispensed. I should have called my manager. I should have written it down in the log like we were supposed to. I didn't do either. I told myself it wasn't worth the hassle. People came and went. Night shift rules were loose by necessity. The radio crackled and then settled into static. I adjusted the dial. The song came back muffled. I leaned against the counter and let my weight sink into my heels. The floor tiles were cracked in places, patched with darker grout. I traced the lines with my eyes. At 1:06, the bell rang again. This time the door didn't open. The sound came from the back. I turned slowly, heart ticking louder than the clock. The back door was shut. The red exit sign above it hummed faintly. The bell over the front door swayed once, then stilled. I laughed, short and sharp, more air than sound. "Old building," I said to no one. I went to the back and checked the door. Locked, I pulled on it anyway. It didn't move. The metal was cool under my palm. I stood there longer than necessary, listening. The hum of the freezer. The click of the clock. When I went back to the counter, the receipt the man had left was gone. I stared at the bare surface where it had been. There were no customers. The cameras showed empty aisles. I checked the trash. Nothing. I bent down and looked under the counter. Clean. I told myself the paper must have slid off. The air conditioner kicked on and pushed a thin breeze across the counter. It was possible. Paper moved. I nodded like that settled it. At 1:22, my phone buzzed. No service. One bar flickered and vanished. I tapped the screen, then locked it and put it face down. The station's Wi-Fi barely reached behind the counter. Texts went through when they felt like it. Another car pulled in, an older pickup, rusted sides. The driver was a woman with her hair pulled back tight. She came in, bought cigarettes, asked for a receipt, took it, left. Normal. Relief washed through me, warm and embarrassing. After she left, I noticed the bell over the door had been turned around. The little metal tongue faced inward now, away from the door. It wouldn't ring properly like that. I stood on my toes and twisted it back. My hands shook enough that it clicked twice. At 1:47, I heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate. They didn't cross the cameras. They circled the building just out of view. Gravel shifted. A cough, then nothing. I didn't lock the door. That was the first bad decision. I told myself it would look suspicious. Corporate hated locked doors. It wanted access even at night. I stayed behind the counter and pretended to read the laminated price list. The footsteps came back, closer this time. They stopped right outside the glass. A shadow blocked the light for a moment. I waited for the bell. It didn't ring. The door opened silently. He stepped inside and stood just past the threshold, holding the door with one hand so it didn't close. Same jacket. Same empty voice. His eyes looked different under the fluorescent lights. Flat, reflective. "You forgot your receipt," he said. He placed it on the counter, smoothing it with his fingers. The paper was warm. I started. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Pump 3. He let the door close behind him. The bell made no sound at all. The clock ticked. The cameras hummed. I realized then that I couldn't hear the highway anymore. He didn't move. Neither did I.